Right. And Evgeny, follow-up question for you is the perimeter sort of first thought process versus data first thought process. Have you seen in your clients sort of a shift, or do you expect to see a shift, or what's your thought process on the perimeter dissolving and then data really coming to the forefront?
So interestingly enough, I literally today was looking at some of the presentation I did, and I found a presentation from 2018 that called Beyond Perimeter. Mm-hmm. It wasn't called SASE during the days. There was no term for this. Now it's Gartner have a term.
Yes.
I definitely see, because we use Office 365, because we use Salesforce, because we use Dropbox, and many other tools that are no longer inside the perimeter, that the perimeter in my mind is everywhere. And funny enough, sometimes we do consulting work or workshop for a customer, and we ask them, so do you use cloud? Like, no, we don't have cloud. Half an hour after, there's Office 365, there's Salesforce. They're just so used to use this that they forget it's actually a cloud. So definitely there's a big shift towards data, towards where is my data is going, who have visibility to this data versus just perimeter. Now, perimeter still exists. If you are a company that has a website and you host the website internally, this is your perimeter. It's just a bit different perimeter. I always say that there is people inside the company that need to do their work. And then there's one set of security controls. And there's my data centers, or what do I do to serve my customers, going to be a bit different. This perimeter exists. We still want to have DDoS protection, WAFs, firewalls, and many other things. Botnet management, API was mentioned here multiple times. It will still be here for quite a long time, or it will be on-prem in the perimeter and in the cloud as well.
Right. And Rob, how about you? Have you seen this sort of shift in your organization for perimeter, I know, versus data, or is that something that is not yet on the radar?
So no, it's definitely a conversation. And our organization, one of the reasons for bringing me on about 4 years ago, was our CISO and our board of directors knew that we had to identify, segment, prioritize our data. We just couldn't treat everything the same. And absolutely, but there really isn't an enterprise way to do that and to do it consistently, accurately, and at speed of workforce, right? Again, that's what I meant from SOAR, because I was working with the men and women on our team who are developing that out. And it is an iterative and painful process, especially if you've made investments in workflows, technologies, whatever have you. Now, I hate the perimeter is dead marketing speech, because it's not. It's going to be here forever.
Sure.
But the perimeter will change, was just mentioned. Your perimeter is your area of control. And we're going to have to relook at how we look at perimeter and not perimeter. But then there's also, there will always be some of that element of that, because we'll always want some type of control, whether we pay someone else to do that control or we enforce that control ourselves. But the data itself, and then being responsible, not just what we do with the data, but what our suppliers do with the data, what our customers do with the data, or access to the data, so forth and so on. Our suppliers do with the data. That is starting to be something that our customers are requiring on us. We are working with our peers in industry. I meet weekly with the Big Ten, and we share, like, how would we do this? But again, we have to do this at scale. It is very easy to do this a couple different use cases. But once you start looking at organizations that have tens to hundreds of business units, and each of those business units trade, share, and modify data in very different ways, in very unique ways, that might be dependent on the customer, might be dependent on their legacy processes, might be dependent on what they're developing on. That is where we are looking like, yes, we need to do this, but it's such a large elephant that myself and my peers, we're really looking at where do we start and how do we start chipping away. But we're going to be kind of a step behind organizations like the financial industry that has been a lot more specific, because there's initiative to dollar sign. And as well as the other limitations we talked about is we can't leverage the greatest and the cloud-based tools to throw it to Google and they'll process it and give you the perfect solution. We're going to have to do this, and we're going to have to be incremental. And that means anytime you do incremental, I'm always going to be dragged a little bit by my legacy processes, equipment, and approaches. And it's almost twice as expensive to do both things in both worlds, because that's the world that we live in. And unless we have someone who says, thou shalt do this on this day, it's going to be kind of this pain point that we're going to kind of drag out to get to that more data-centric view of security. But that perimeter, that on-day security, all of that, that's not going away. At best, it will mature and integrate the things that we have reliances on, but that's going to stay. But in parallel, there's also going to be, where is our data? What is our data? Who are we responsible for that data? And what kind of controls can we place on that data at scale that we're not going to break our more manual, our legacy processes? And then eventually, I hope we can have as we say in the South, a come to Jesus conversation with ourselves and our businesses to say, are our workflows holding us back from being able to holistically better protect our information and meet these requirements? And is it worth the pain to do that transition? And I think that's a conversation we're going to be having over the next, even in my industry, in the next 3 to 5 years, and being it as a business cost to not do this versus a business cost to transition to do this.
Got it. Thanks. I had one sort of. I know we're running out of time. Sorry. Go ahead, Manu.
No, I was going to add something to that. When we talk about perimeter in the past and boundaries of perimeter and perimeter security, it is morphing. It is maturing. And what I see, like you said, is it's more data centric, because in all reality, the data centric perimeter is there. Because if it's in the cloud or some other ecosystem air gap, that data needs to be protected through its lineage. And what Rob mentioned was lineage, which was key part, because it's not how we take the data in one place, it's how it's morphed, how it's transformed, where it goes to, how it goes to them. That tracking has to be there for the data lineage side. And that's where data-centric security and perimeter is actually part of that whole ecosystem of security, perimeter, and everything around the data itself. That's the core asset.
Right. Agreed.